Did you know that if you walk around Night City with your scanner and you look at some advertisements, you might get additional texts, slogans, or like deal notices about those advertisements? This is a little detail that doesn't actually change anything about the game or your gameplay, but still makes you feel a lot more immersed in the world. And it's simple to miss, really. I don't blame you, least of all because it doesn't work on every ad. It's just a simple thing to make you, the player, feel like V in Night City. Games are full of tricks to immerse players like this, and I want to devote some time to talking about these points in some games. In this video specifically, Cyberpunk 2077. What does it actually mean for it to be immersive? What does it actually mean for you to feel like V in Night City? I want to take a look at Cyberpunk 2077 and do a deeper dive into what makes it actually immersive for players and what makes it stand out amongst other games in its genre. Before I get too into it, this is my first video on this channel, and this is also just like my first time making a video like this in general. So subscribe please, and leave a like. But ultimately, if neither of those things, please just leave a comment below with your thoughts on my points or bringing your own points to the table. I'm not going to cover absolutely everything in this video, but I do want to cover a good amount, and I also want to see what you guys have to say as well. Thank you. I've played hundreds of hours of Cyberpunk, and it was only in my last playthrough that I noticed that thing about the ads. And I might come back to it later in different videos, but I just want you to think about how crazy it is that it's in the game. In order for it to be in the game, they had to think about making advertisements in the first place. Then they have to think about a bunch of brands or slogans or products for things to be advertised in the universe. Those have to get approved. Those designs have to get approved. And then any interaction with the player has to be approved. So there are some signs that you can hack to distract enemies, but these signs you can't. These are literally just there to read the text. And that suggestion had to also be made and then approved, and then coded. This is a very conscious decision of the developers to put into the game. That's kind of cool. And to me, honestly, that's part of the wonder of making games in general, and especially games that have little immersive or needless details like that. And especially with the larger the company, the more tedious of a process it is to get it into the game. You know what I mean? If you're a single solo dev, if you want to put an extra interactable in the game, it's more work on you, but you can do it without any, interruptions. But if you're working at CD Projekt Red or Ubisoft, you have to go through a more soul-sucking process to get anything into the game. And I think it really shows the passion of the devs that they wanted to put it into the game. And that's just so cool about game design and what makes it an art. I would hazard a guess that you've probably played Grand Theft Auto, and I would hazard a guess on top of that, that if you've played Grand Theft Auto, there's been at least one point where you've tried to drive the speed limit and obey traffic laws. I don't know why. It's just a weird sort of semi emergent narrative / role play that players like doing. And honestly, I get it. I do it from time to time too. But usually you get bored of it pretty quickly. I find I don't last that long at all, especially in Grand Theft Auto. I feel like if I'm going from point A to point B, I want to go there as fast as possible. When it comes to Cyberpunk, which actually has fast travel, I think I use that fast travel a handful of times my entire time playing the game, mostly to get in and out of Dogtown. That's it. Otherwise, I usually drive, even if it's 6 kilometers of driving away, I usually drive to that spot. And I don't really know why, but I love driving so much in the game, even though it gives me a fast travel option. But I know that if I was playing Grand Theft Auto and it gave me a fast travel option, I'm taking that fast travel option 9 times out of 10 times. There could be a few reasons for this. I have a couple kind of immersive takes on it before I go to the next topic that aren't super big, but I do think they help play a role. Not only does just the city of Night City feel good and every area feels distinct, but also believably distinct in their own way. And the cars, the way they look on the outside is amazing. But the cars on the inside also kind of look amazing too. A bunch of the Thornton cars have somewhat similar dashboards that you can tell are unique components of the Thornton company, but it's so different from something like a Caliburn. And I think that being inside the car and seeing some similarities and some differences it's really real. It's immersive and real, because both of those are two different things. But I think that it does play a role. I like driving because I like being inside the car and being holy shit, this is awesome. And while that's fine and dandy, I honestly think that the most engaging thing about driving in Night City is one of the best things about the game in general. It plays a massive role, and that is the music. Holy crap, does the music play a massive role in this immersion. I know it's a lot of work for studios to make official soundtracks normally, but on top of that, making your own custom licensed and DMCA free music for your radio stations, and it's like a crap ton of music, by the way, is a lot of work and a lot of effort, but oh my God, does it pay off. One of the things that was consistent even during the game's rough launch was how people loved the music of Cyberpunk, and I don't blame them. I've had it, like, before it was on Spotify, I had already ripped it from YouTube and put it into my Spotify playlist, like through a custom library. And it's not just that they're good tracks, it's that the music, whether it's the radio station, a melancholy track, hopeful, or full of intense action, all of them are cohesive and have a united character. It really fits the feeling of Night City and V's journey within Night City. To emphasize the point, I've actually grabbed a few different examples, either from different scenes or just the different tracks themselves, for you to really get a grasp of this before I show a bit of behind the scenes footage about that.
Big man doing big man things. Sick boy, my whip, same thing.
Score is the main vessel of emotions in both movies and video games, and Cyberpunk 2077 is no different.
Getting that sound together is almost as important as the actual look of the game itself, because the music is really helping you feel this emotional connection to the game.
We took elements from rave, IDM, industrial, and make them fit our narrative purposes.
It acknowledges the grunge in the dirt, but also the futile yet indefatigable optimism that the city still holds. These sounds and instruments were specifically chosen to fit the presence of Night City and this cyberpunk dystopia. I think it's pretty important to realize the role that soundtracks play in amplifying the experiences of players. It really enhances the feeling of being a merc in Night City. Whether it's sad, whether it's good, whether it's mad, whether it's hood. That was so fucking cringy, but I know I'm going to keep that take. Gameplay is also another core aspect of how game developers make you immersed in their world. What you can or can't interact with, how you move about the world, like driving, how crafting or fighting works. Developers have to work tediously to manage the balance of gameplay and making it a video game, while also trying to present you with the world in the way that they want to make you digest it the way they want you to. Cyberpunk initially does this with constant in-game first-person cameras and scenes. While some people may have their own opinions on it, like especially not having a third person, I know is a big thing to some people, the actual experience of the game is best in first person. You are V. The whole point of this game is you are V, and it does all this magic in first person to help you experience it that way. You're never necessarily out of control, even when like you're forced to sit down through longer story beats. You can still move your camera a bit. You can still scan around and stuff. But like in a real conversation, you're not going to be walking around like... Like, you don't do that in real life. And while it's not trying to necessarily mimic real life, it's trying to give you an immersive experience as someone who's paying attention in a fucking conversation for once, you ADHD-ridden folks. There are endings of the game with actual cutscenes, but if you ask me, they stand out in a bad way, except for one of them. So minor spoilers ahead, a little time code will tell you when to skip. I think the only one that fits is the ending where you get the surgery in Phantom Liberty, where you walk into Night City as a faceless drone, joining the crowds, just becoming a regular Joe. I think that only works because that's like, you're no longer V, you are a shell of V. And I think that that cutscene really serves to make that purpose felt. And I just feel like otherwise cutscenes don't really belong in the game, at least to make you feel immersed as V. Cyberpunk 2 apparently is going to have like a bunch of cutscenes and stuff in it. I don't know how I feel about that. Personally, I've already expect Cyberpunk 2 to not be remotely as immersive as Cyberpunk 1, but I could spend way too long ranting about that. So that's all I'm going to say about it in this video. Another way gameplay design comes into things, not necessarily gameplay design, but as a gameplay interaction comes in, is with containers. So like in Legend of Zelda, there are different chest designs for sometimes different areas, but especially different Zelda games. Even though they're all in the same franchise and the same world, the chests take on their own appearances, sometimes for fancier things, sometimes for regular things, sometimes just that water temple's chest looks different than another water temple's chest. But with a game like Cyberpunk, they have to go an extra mile, and I think with Cyberpunk, they actually really do. You can loot medical cabinets, little bags, purses, construction containers, and a lot of these times these things are put there to meticulously set the scene of wherever you are. If you're in like a creepy ass bathroom, there'll be creepy ass shit you can loot. If you go into like a medical cabinet, even, that's more likely to have medical loot. These are conscious decisions made for you to feel more immersed as you're just looting. And it's really subtle and doesn't really do much, but you'd notice it if it was all the same thing. Some loot's hidden behind doors or like just locked in general that are hidden behind hacking or skill checks. And I think this is like their way of encouraging you, obviously, to build your character a certain way, but also limits you in a way that makes sense. Like, yeah, I won't be able to loot that locker behind that door unless I can somehow get that door open. And now how you can open that door sometimes varies. Sometimes you can hack, sometimes you can do it physically. Like, you generally have options. And for the most part, the loot isn't that important anyways, that you're not going to miss out on anything big. But it's still just like an extra little side room of like a few pieces of loot that you can have if you just want a few more IDs or something like that. Although I do have a personal favorite method for interacting with the world, and that is hacking. Hacking plays a massive role in Cyberpunk, and it makes sense for a technologically advanced 2077 that we're in, where people have some form of computer or electronics in their body or brain you can jack in with or something like that. It makes sense that you would be able to hack them. Well, that was probably laid out in the Cyberpunk 2077 tabletop role-playing game that these games are based off of. When the game first released in 2020, late 2020, the most hacking that could really happen to you was maybe you could be traced in your location. As a stealthy player myself, I like, standing around and hacking people until they're incapacitated and making it as easy as possible for me afterwards. But then if you do too many hacks, they would trace your location. And with the way it works now is not only can they do that, but the enemies can actually hack you and use some of the hacks that you use on them on you. And I really appreciate that. It makes sense that if you're in Night City and you're in this world where people have these cybernetics and stuff like that, why would you be the only one that can hack? It shouldn't be every average Joe, in the same way that every average Joe doesn't know how to hack now. But when it comes to like people who deal with combat or stuff like that, I think it just makes sense that it's natural for the world and these enemies to be able to hack you back. And again, it's not even all the enemies. They still balance hacking. When an enemy hacks you, it's slower, but when you hack them, it's quicker. This is because if they hacked at your speed, it would be kind of detrimental to the experience because it would be too annoying. But if you hacked at their speed, it would be detrimental to your experience because it would be annoying. So it's a little bit of a trade-off that they do to give the player a little bit of an advantage and make it more fun. They got to make concessions somewhere. Another way that Cyberpunk makes you immersed through gameplay, and this is the last one I'm going to talk about for this, is how you have to wait several in-game days sometimes between missions from certain mission providers. Where Takamura might have to get some things ready, you might have to wait 3 or 2 in-game days before he's actually ready for that mission. And this serves the player in a gameplay experience by saying, hey, go do some other mission or go do some side content, But it also is a really immersive thing for a game to do. A lot of games don't really care. And it's actually a gripe I have with a lot of games where you do a mission where you set up something or you discover something and then the next mission will be like taking action on that. But you just drive to the next spot 2 minutes later and they already have everything necessary for the next mission. Like, I get it as a concession you have to make for gameplay, but also, why? Cyberpunk is lucky in the sense that it gives the player so many like things to do on the side aside from just following one mission chain. So it never really feels like you're out of things to do during this time. You may not even realize that's what's happening until near the end of the game when you're trying to wrap up certain like arcs between characters, and you have to actually use the wait function to wait several days for like the call or text that's coming in. I also like that they always call and text you. Like it does technically appear on your map in that moment, but for the most part, you accept the call, and that's what lets you know the lowdown of the next mission. And I think that a lot more games should take this approach, especially because it kind of encourages doing side content. And as someone who 100%s a lot of the RPGs I play, I always find problems between when to do the main story and when to do side content. And I found that with Cyberpunk, it gives me as the player, okay, now I can do some side content before I go and do the next mission, sort of a thing. Lastly, there is the way that narrative plays a role in immersion. And this isn't just like the story beats. I mean, like we're talking narrative as a whole, as a highbrow concept. In Cyberpunk, you play as a merc known solely as V. You don't even know V's name. And it only comes up a couple times in the actual story, and it comes up so nonchalantly because, again, the game is trying to make you be V. You're not just like someone playing V. The idea is that you are immersed as V. And so when you see your name, you're not going, oh my God, Valerie, oh my God. You're going like, my name's Valerie, and that's that. To the player, it's like, wait, is their name Valerie? But like, it still kind of entices you to have the same nonchalant reaction to the name. And I think it does it really well. Like, I find it really cool that it just doesn't care whether or not you notice their real name. You're V. You are who they became after their life. Whether you're a street kid, a corporal, whatever, you are who V like became, if that makes sense. And that's why also at the end of the game, when there are cutscenes, that you are finally disembodied from V, because V's story is done. The whole point is that you are experiencing it as V. I don't know how many times I can say it in this video. I think it's so cool because it's so easy to miss or not think about, but in the abstract sense, you are experiencing things as V. So it shouldn't be a big deal when you see your name, even if it's like, yep, that's what I used to be called, but that's not me anymore. Cyberpunk is also great when it comes to narrative world building in like a nonchalant way, like it doesn't rub it in your face. And I think another great example of that is the slang. Whether it's saying preem or choom or gonk or anything else, every piece of slang in this game not only feels like credible for the world that it's in, but is also banger. Like, I don't know anyone who's like played through the game or is like in an active playthrough of the game that doesn't want to say choom or preem especially. And they don't explain it to you. They don't have like a Marvel-esque dialogue of like, oh, V, you're such a gonk for not knowing what choom means. Like, choom means buddy, or like, you know what I mean? It literally just straight up, it'll be like, what are you doing, choom? And then whether it's like Choomba or like, the tone it's said, like it's serving different purposes, they literally make this slang like tangible. Every other time a game tries to do their own slang, so much of the time it just comes off as like cringy or stupid. And I don't know how Cyberpunk has created, I don't know if it came from the TTRPG or if this is like CD Projekt Red's own doing, but all I can say is the dialogue wouldn't feel as immersive if these words were bad. Does that make sense? If it was just like a bad slang word instead, I think it would suck you out of it. You'd be like, I fucking hate that word. Like, they had to test these words to make sure that players were okay and chill with them, because otherwise you'd be sucked out of the game and you wouldn't want to continue playing as V. So it's really important that they do these and that they don't draw attention to it, because yeah, you as V know what these words mean. Why would it be explained to you? Player choice is obviously like one of the driving components of playing Cyberpunk. It's a story, it's a narrative-driven RPG. It has the regular elements of that in like how it affects your endings and the more like overt, obvious details, but there's actually a lot of subtle details or subtle things that can happen based by your choice that you may not even know are your choice. So let's get into some of those. Depending on if you grab Alt's hair as Johnny, yes, even as Johnny, your actions change the course of the story a little bit. Her attitude for the game and how she like talks to both you or Johnny also changes. And by siding with Militech or Maelstrom during one of the opening missions, even depending on who you kill or save during that mission, whether you free Brick or you kill Dum Dum, you work with Maelstrom or not, the appearances of these characters much later on in the story when you go to reunite Samurai changes. And I didn't even know there was like an option for, I forget her name. There's like there's a third boss essentially. So I assume that if you kill Royce and leave Brick to die, that she ends up being the leader. It's so inconsequential because in the end, like, you don't fight with them again. I don't know. Whenever I do that mission, I usually try and vary which way I go about it every single time. I just think it's really neat that happens, because they don't need to be back in the story at all. You don't ever need to see the consequences of your actions again for that, but they make you do that. And because this Night City world is kind of still all interconnected and meshed, and that's one of their ways to make you realize that and feel immersed in that. You also get an entirely new song if you do all of Carrie's side quests. I recommend doing those missions anyways. If you mention to Jackie to upgrade his bike or get a new exhaust or something like that, when he does eventually pass and you get his bike, you actually get an upgraded version of his bike. I didn't know that until researching it for this video either. And lastly, Takamura gets mistaken for a celebrity if you take some time to like get to Jig Jig Street earlier on after you meet him. Again, another thing I did not know before researching this, because I'm such a side content person that I almost never go with someone to their objective. So I just thought that was something that happened every time, but apparently it's not. It's little unspoken things like these. Well, I mean, I guess technically they're spoken, that really make the narrative experience feel more immersive. Because not only do you see the regular changes that you expect to come from your actions and choices, but you also get those little additional things that literally curate your immersed experience without you ever realizing that's what they're doing. This is a level of detail that not a lot of choice-driven games go to, or at least not that I know of. And I think that plays a role in shaping the story around you. Like that celebrity Takamura thing, I could think that that's the entire experience of the game, but on the one time that I play the game and I change that, I'll feel maybe even more immersed in the story. One of the other ways that it takes player choices and interactions and their own kind of narrative experience throughout the game and makes it more immersive is at the end credits, where all these people that you formed relationships with send you little like videos at the end, usually somber in note, sometimes funny, sometimes optimistic, but they just send you or V these little messages, these little like last goodbyes essentially. And some people might think that that's unrealistic and that it serves especially like specifically the player. And in that sense, I think it does serve the player more than V, but it's not necessarily not immersive. There's a lot of people, as sad as it is, who will call the voicemail of a past loved one who is now gone, and it's their last chance to hear their voice before their number gets taken away. I know it's a trope in movies, but people actually do that. This is no different. This is that, but like every call you have normally has video attached to it anyways, so why wouldn't this just be V's voicemail after they're gone? I'm not sure how it was my first time ever playing through the game. I'm sure that I teared up a bit then. Going through the game with my new beefy computer, yeah, I wept. Oh my God. I was so emotionally impacted by the end of that playthrough. And I was like, holy crap, I actually really love this game. It was actually one of the inciting reasons, this was months ago at this point, for me to even create this channel. So you can thank Cyberpunk for that, or not. If you play a totally different campaign, or you do a different ending mission or something like that, you will experience different videos that genuinely change the emotions that weigh on you during the ending credits. But if we want to talk about immersive gut punches of oof, there's only one ending in particular that I want to mention. This one is much more spoilery than everything else I've said in the video, so you can kind of skip it again. This is specifically spoilers for one of the endings for Phantom Liberty. You've been warned. But after you save Songbird, Reed goes back to Langley and helps set up surgery for you to get your surgery. I didn't want to say surgery, but my brain wasn't thinking of anything else, and I can't read my script. It's too blurry. So the beginning of this ending already starts in a way that sucks, especially if you've already played through the game and beaten it. Once is enough, but even several times before, because at this point, as a player, you know the Johnny experience. He's apparently trying not to make you feel bad about it. He's obviously angry about your choice. It's also, he's completely powerless to stop you, and he understands that this is also your life. Like, he doesn't, even if you're early on in the story, he also understands that like getting this second chance for himself is really just almost empty optimism. This ending really shows that optimism deflate. And this is like the first 10 minutes of the ending. And this ending is like 30 minutes, and the rest just gets worse. Like, you thought you would be done the surgery and recovered in maybe a few months. No, you're out for 2 years cold. And of course, in that time, you're not responding to any calls or texts that your friends have sent. You wake up and Reed is like, yo, it's been 2 years. But also you can't use cybernetics anymore. These unique traits that, while other people have cybernetics, you have spent your whole gameplay curating your cybernetics to best fit your playstyle or the way you want to do it. And now you're done. No more. V has spent all this time getting all these things to be this version of themselves, and now they have none of that. So they can't even go back to doing the work they used to do. Then you are able to look at the messages that you've received since you've been in the hospital, and it's heart-wrenching. You see people go through like different stages of grief. You see how angry they are with you, how like maybe cautiously optimistic they are for you that you escaped Night City, and you really get this mix of emotions where it's like, holy shit, like if I disappeared out of a lot of loved ones' lives for 2 years, I would get some texts like these. You know what I mean? And that's already heart-wrenching and gut-punching enough. But then you have to call people. Dude, the calls are the hardest part. This ending is all about slow torture. And the fact that you have to individually call each of your friends, and you get to see how they've moved on with their lives, how maybe they've forgotten about you, how some of them think it's best that you don't contact them at all. It sucks because both as a player and as V, you are experiencing this in real time. This is one of the only times where you're actually truly experiencing one-to-one time with V. Because 5 minutes ago, you were on the ship getting your surgery. Maybe you set up one last final date with whoever you were a lover with, and then you went on this mission. And then now they don't even have time for you. Now they've moved on. Now they have someone else. In the span of what is 30 minutes of your life, both in real life and as V, you have lost everything that you just invested hundreds of hours in. And it's slow. It is awkward. It is painful. It is so well done. It just makes your heart sink. Then you finally get the choice to leave the hospital, and you do, and you go and see Victor because you're like, hey, you know, Victor's my guy, he's my home, he's my hombre. Even as you're getting brought through Night City in this time, you get to see how much Night City's changed in 2 years. There seems to be more corporate suffocating of this city. In some way, Night City got worse. And you can see how it's both slowly and quickly becoming worse. It's actually really well formed. I really liked looking at the city as you're driving through it. I wanted to pause and look more because there's so many changes, but yet it's the same. And I think they did it really well. But on top of that, when you finally show up, you see that Misty's shop is no longer there. It's some weird corporate bullcrap. And then you find out that Victor had to basically sell out to keep his shop. And he doesn't even, like, he can't even interact with you the way that he used to. He's being constantly watched or regarded, and he has to act certain ways, say certain things. He can't be more personable with you. V is like, dog, this is unfair. And he's like, I know this is unfair, but you gotta understand. And V, understandably, doesn't want to understand. This is hard. You just lost everything, and your one hope that you had, the one guy that actually talked to you, he can't do it either. He's changed in 2 years, even if he still doesn't want to have. And lastly, you see Misty as you finally get your crap rocked by people that are the equivalent of a 35-year-old unironically using Riz. And when Misty is there, she is truly a true friend to you, but even some of her optimism, especially that the city can change, is gone. And she's ready to leave Night City for good. As the camera finally leaves you, shows your bald face as you're about to go into the city as a faceless drone, you finally feel like the story is complete. After you have agonizingly lost every single thing that you've worked for. And that sucks, dude. That sucks so much. Like, I think I cry more still, or like I tear up more at like the end credits videos, I think, because the sheer shock of experiencing that Phantom Liberty ending and how immersive every single part of it is. Like, they really go out of their way to make sure that you feel that punch, that you feel betrayed, that you feel the crap of it all. They could have easily just said that this all happened, or like, you know, you get an email about it or something, but they went out of their way to make this a genuine experience for the player. I had already like read about this ending when I did get my new computer. I debated, and it was my first time playing since Phantom Liberty. I debated, do I do a Phantom Liberty ending or do I do one of the existing endings? And I did do the space heist ending, because that was the first ending I ever got, which I actually got by accident. I read about this ending to see if I wanted to do it, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds like it'll suck, but you know, I'll do it eventually. But honestly, knowing about this ending ahead of time did not take away the emotional impact that it had. And I think that really shows just the power of the narrative immersion at play here. It's not just that, you know, 20 minutes of ending that you're experiencing. It's a culmination of all the hundreds of hours you've already put into that save potentially. Everything that you have invested in for that version of V plays a role into that ending. But just like that ending, this video is ending as well. There are so many immersive aspects of Cyberpunk. I could spend hours upon hours talking about them, and I will probably at a later date. But I really just wanted to make this video first, especially as a test to see if I want to do videos like this. And I think I do. I've enjoyed making this, so I want to do more. And I got a bunch of videos already planned out. So subscribe if you want to see more of those. You know, leave a comment, even like criticizing not only just my points, but also the editing style. I want to learn, like, I want to make this my own thing, but at the same time, I want to know how I can improve and be better. So if you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you have an issue with any of the points I brought up, well, good for you. After all, I just call them how I see them.